Good morning, scholars and families. Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to another day of guided reading with Miss Rossi. We only have about 6 more times where we're going to be learning together over our videos. So nice job if you've stuck with me this whole time, and awesome job if you're going to keep on learning and keep on reading with me this week and next week. All right, my friends, let's go ahead and get started. We are going to be talking about, got tricked. We are going to first talk about our inferences, and then we're going to read a brand new story today about an awesome child who made a difference in her world. Before we read our story, we're going to remember what it means to make an inference. So I want you to pause your video now, and I want you to tell me what an inference is. Go ahead and pause your video and do that now. An inference is a guess. An inference is an inference is a, yeah, it's a guess. Are we guessing about anything we feel like? No. We need 2 things to make an inference. Pause your video and tell me what 2 things we need to make an inference now. We need text, evidence, and schema. We need good, and schema is what you know. Schema is good. And today we're going to be using the same schema that we used yesterday when we talked about Martin Luther King, and on Monday when we talked about Rosa Parks, because we used the schema that we know that a lot of years ago, Black people and white people weren't treated the same. The laws were unfair, and they didn't have the same opportunities. Remember, we talked about how Black people and white people couldn't go to the movie theaters together. They couldn't even go to the same schools. So that is going to be our schema today, because we're going to read about a girl who made a difference in schools. Wow. And the other exciting thing about this girl is she made a difference, and she was in 1st grade. I know some 1st graders that can make a difference, lots of 1st graders. So we're going to read our story today about this awesome, brave 1st grade girl. And we need our schema of thinking and knowing that Black people and white people were not always equal. So that's going to be our schema today when we talk about our story. Let's go ahead and read our sentence stem so we can remember how to answer an inferential question, or how to make an inference. Take your finger and put it underneath the word in. We're reading together on 2, 1, 2. In the story, I read blank, so that makes me think blank. Good, I want you to pause your video and say the sentence stem one more time. Go ahead and do that now. You should have said, in the story, I read blank, so that makes me think blank. Excellent job with your inferences today, friends. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with our book. Our book today is about a girl named Ruby Bridges. Her name is, say Ruby Bridges. Now I'm going to tell you a little secret. Don't tell anyone, and especially don't tell your 2nd grade teachers, okay? We are learning about Ruby Bridges today, and when you go to 2nd grade, you are going to be reading lots of books about Ruby Bridges. And so your 2nd grade teachers already have books picked out about Ruby Bridges, and I want to send my 1st graders to 2nd grade already knowing or already having some schema about Ruby Bridges. So you're getting a sneak peek into 2nd grade right now. So let's get ready to read about Ruby Bridges. She's one of my favorite people. All right, let's go ahead and find out what Ruby Bridges did for our country. Go ahead and, friends, pause your video and read the table of contents now. Before you start reading, I want to show you this map. Ruby's story takes place in New Orleans. It takes place in, and that's pretty far away from us. You have to get on an airplane to get to New Orleans, or it's a long, long car ride. So us in Chicago, we're all the way up here, and New Orleans is all the way down here. So we're reading a story about somewhere called New Orleans that's a little bit far away from us, okay? All right, friends, I want you to go ahead and start reading the 1st chapter. Who was Ruby Bridges? Pause your video and read this page now. Excellent job, friends. Go ahead and let's read the 2nd chapter. Pause your video and read this page now. Pause your video and read this page now. Let's go ahead and read the 3rd chapter. How was Ruby brave? Pause your video and read this page now. Excellent endurance, excellent reading, friends. Make sure you're not guessing your words. Make sure you're using a strategy to figure them out. Go ahead, pause your video and read this page now. Excellent job, friends. Go ahead and pause your video and read this page now. Nice job. Pause your video and read this page now. Oh, I love this part about Ruby's teachers. Nice endurance, friends. Go ahead and pause your video and read this page now. All right, let's read about Mr. Coles. Pause your video and read this page now. Next chapter, how did Ruby make a difference? Pause your video and read this page now. Pause your video and read this page now. Nice job, friends. Keep going. You got it. Pause your video and read this page now. And our last page, our glossary, where it tells us our words that were bolded and our definitions. Go ahead and pause your video and read the glossary now. Wow, you guys are getting to be such good readers, like second graders. Nice job. Excellent, excellent job. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with our questions. We're going to be making inferences today. We're going to be using our text evidence and our schema. Let's go ahead and get started. The first question is, friends, who was Ruby Bridges? Who was Ruby Bridges? Pause your video and answer that question now. In the story, I read that Ruby Bridges was a little girl who made a big difference, and that she lived in the South. So in the South is where we talked about where slavery happened, where white people owned Black people to work on their lands. That happened in the South. And so Ruby lived in the South, in the same area where slavery was happening. And in the South is where the laws were really, really unfair and unequal for Black people and white people. What were the laws like in the South? What were the laws like in the South? Go ahead and pause your video and answer that question now. In the story, I read that laws in the South were not fair to Black people. They kept Black people and white people separate. So instead of having Black people and white people together doing things, they kept Black people and white people separate. So the laws were unfair. The laws were. Let's look at this picture, because this is the same picture we read yesterday. We looked at yesterday when we read about Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King. This says for colored only. So this Black man can only drink out of this water fountain. And this white man can only drink out of this water fountain. They couldn't even drink out of the same water fountains because the laws were unfair. The laws were, yes, just like the laws, these were the same laws that Martin Luther King did not like. And these were the same laws that Rosa Parks did not like when she was on the bus. So all of these laws were unfair to Black people, and they did not like it. What were schools like in the South? What were the schools like in the South? Pause your video and answer that question now. In the story, I read that Black children and white children had to go to different schools. So in the whole United States, Black people and white people were supposed to go to the same schools. But in the South, they kept them separate. And Black people were not happy that they couldn't have the same schools as white people. So I'm going to answer that question one more time. In the story, I read that Black children and white children had to go to different schools because the laws were unfair. That's what the schools were like in the South. Nice job. Then it says, many people wanted to make the Southern schools follow the law. So a lot of people were saying, wait a second, the president says that we are supposed to be going to that Black people and white people should be going to the same schools, but we're going to separate schools. That's not fair. So let's see what happens. How was Ruby brave? Okay, friends, I want you to answer that question. How was Ruby brave? How was Ruby brave? Pause your video and answer that question now. In the story I read, that she was the only Black student in her whole school. Picture your whole school and picture being the only one that looks like you. That must be really hard for a first grade scholar, but she shows lots of bravery because guess what? She goes anyways. Look at the picture. I see a white kid. I see a white kid. I see a white kid. I see a white man. I see a white man. I see a white man. And then I see Ruby. She's the only one that looks like that. That shows a lot of bravery and endurance to do something that brave. Wow. How did white parents feel about Ruby going to their school? How did white parents feel about Ruby going to their school? Pause your video and answer that question now. In the story I read that white parents did not want their children to go to school with a Black child, so they kept their children at home. I'm gonna say that one more time, friends. White people did not even want their kids to go to school with a Black child, and so they didn't send their kids to school. That is so sad for Ruby. Ruby thinks that she is a problem because none of the white kids want to go to school with her. So in the story I read, that white parents kept their kids home because they didn't want their kids to go to school with a Black student. Let's go back to this page one more time. How does Ruby feel on this page? How do you think Ruby feels on this page? Pause your video and answer that question now. In the story, I see that Ruby is talking to her mom, it looks like. It looks like she's asking some questions. So that makes me think that Ruby is confused or scared, because I see in the picture that there are white people who are very upset. And I think that Ruby doesn't understand why they're so mad. So in the story I read that white people kept their children home, that makes me think that Ruby is confused or scared about what might happen. Nice job, friends. Let's keep going. Very good. Why were people standing outside of Ruby's school? Why were people standing outside of Ruby's school? Pause your video and answer that question now. In the story I read that they were angry white people that stood outside of her school, and they yelled at Ruby every day. So we need to make an inference. Why do we think they were yelling at Ruby? Well, in the story I read that white people didn't want their kids to go to school with Black people. So that makes me think that these white people were angry or upset that Ruby, a Black child, was going to their school. So they were yelling at Ruby because they didn't want the Black child to go to their all-white school. This makes my heart so sad, friends, because if this was the case, we wouldn't be able to go to school together. And that makes me so sad. So let's see what happens. Did Ruby give up? Did Ruby give up? Did she say, I don't like this. This is too hard. I don't want to go to school here anymore. Did she give up, friends? No. Ruby kept going to school. Even though there were people mad at her, even though people were screaming at her every single day, she still went to school. I love that endurance. I love that bravery. Wow. Okay, friends, we're gonna pause for 1 second and we're gonna read this box. I want you to read it with me because this is also a really important thing that happened in our history. So let's go ahead and take our finger and put it under the words, do you know? If it's too small for you to do that on your phone or iPad, that's okay. Just listen to Miss Rossi, okay? We're reading together on 2, 1, 2. Do you know other Black students in the South went to all-white schools like Ruby? In 1957, 9 Black teenagers went to a white high school in Little Rock, Arkansas. The President of the United States sent soldiers to protect the students so they could go to school. So also near Ruby's time, there were 9 Black teenagers who wanted to go to an all-white high school. And people were so mad that there was going to be Black students in their school that the president had to send soldiers to keep them safe. That is how mad white people were to be going to school with Black people, which is very, very sad and not okay. Let's keep going. Who helped Ruby when she was in school? Who helped Ruby when she was in school? Pause your video and answer that question now. In the story, I read that a really nice teacher named Mrs. Henry helped her, and also a man named Mr. Coles helped her in school. I love that. She had teachers that were helping her. Nice job. Next question for this page is, why was Ruby the only child in the classroom? Why was Ruby the only child in the classroom? Pause your video and answer that question now. In the story, I read that all the other kids had been pulled out of the class by their parents. So that means the parents saw that there was a Black child in the class and they took their kids out of the class because they didn't want them in there with Ruby. So sad. Now, my favorite thing is Ruby doesn't look sad in this picture, and neither does her teacher. It's sad that that's how Ruby was treated, but it looks like she's showing endurance. It looks like she's doing some math. Ooh, I love that first grade scholarness. And so Ruby showed endurance, and she kept doing her best, and I love that about Ruby. How did Mr. Coles help Ruby? How did Mr. Coles help Ruby? Pause your video and answer that question now. In the story I read, he helped Ruby with the way she felt about going to school. Yeah, so she was probably really scared and confused, like we talked about. So Mr. Coles helped her with her feelings. Oh my gosh, he sounds awesome. My friends, what can you do if you're having a lot of feelings, or if you're frustrated or upset or scared or confused? What can you do? I hope some of you said, take a deep breath. Remember, you can think of things that make you happy. If we're in school, you can ask to go to Calm Corner. Yes, those are all things you can do. And just like Ruby, you can also draw a picture. That might help too. And it says Ruby drew pictures about her feelings. Wow, I love that. So responsible of Ruby. Next page. What was Ruby like? How would you describe Ruby? What was she like? Was she scared? Was she brave? Was she jealous? Was she mean? What was Ruby like? Pause your video and answer that question now. All right, friends, this is my favorite page. It says, Ruby was a brave girl who didn't let anything stop her from going to school. So above everything else, Ruby was brave. Ruby was, yes, she didn't let the white people or the yelling or the officers stop her from going to school. And the most important thing I want you to remember is that she showed that children can help change a country. Raise your hand if you're a child. You should be raising your hand if you're a child. So you can also help change a country. You can also show bravery and endurance like Ruby did if you are standing up for something that is right. Wow, awesome job. Okay, I want to look up here at this box because this is one of my favorite pictures. Okay, let's look. Oh, sorry, that line was bad. Okay, ready? Take your finger, put it underneath. Do you know? We're going to read this together. If you can't see it, that's okay. Please listen. Get ready. We're reading together on 2, 1, 2. Do you know? This photo shows Ruby Bridges with President Barack Obama in 2011. They are standing in front of a painting called The Problem We All Live With. It shows Ruby being taken to school by officers. So look at the picture. This is Ruby Bridges right here, this little girl. And these are the white officers that are taking her into the school to keep her safe. Now, this right here is the real Ruby Bridges. She is still alive today, and she still lives and talks to people about equality. And this person is one of the best people, is President Barack Obama. And he met Ruby Bridges, and they looked at the painting of Ruby Bridges when she was little, because Ruby did such important things for our schools that Obama was honoring her. Wow, I love that. I love that. All right, let's go ahead and keep going. So this happened in real life, friends. Ruby Bridges really met Barack Obama in real life. All right, we are almost there. What happened the next year at school? What happened the next year at school? Pause your video and answer that question now. In the story I read that other Black students went to school with Ruby. Silent excitement, yay! So Ruby was the first Black kid to go to that school, but then other Black kids also decided to go to that school, even though there was white people at that school. Wow, it was revolutionary. It was. That means it was the first time where lots of Black kids and lots of white kids were going to school together. Yay! And the last thing is, I'm gonna see if I can do a little, watch this. Oh, I did a little stamp, friends. Okay, let's look at this sentence. Today, many different children go to school together. That's right. I'm gonna draw a little heart. We got a little smiley face. Today, Black people, white people, Spanish-speaking students, any other culture students can all go to school together, which is so much fun. And the reason why we're all here together today. I love that. What does Ruby do today? What does Ruby do today? She's not a kid anymore. She's a grown-up. This is Ruby. What does she do today? Pause your video and answer that question now. In the story I read that Ruby works to bring children together, and she works to make the world fair for everyone. Ooh, she works to make the world fair. She works to make the world. Now I want you to pause your video and tell me, name 2 other people that we read about that worked to make the world fair. Name 2 other people we learned about who also worked to make the world fair. Pause your video and answer that question now. I know that Martin Luther King worked to make the world fair, and I know that Rosa Parks worked to make the world fair. You also could have said Barack Obama, because we learned about him in school, and we learned that he also tried to make things even more fair for Black people in our country. Nice job answering that question. Ooh, glossary. Okay, now I have my last question. This is the most important question of the day. I want you to think about how Ruby Bridges affected your life. So you are a first grade student at a school of students that look all different. We have students that have all different skin colors at our school. So my question is, how did Ruby affect your life? So I want you to use your schema and think about what Ruby did and answer how Ruby has affected your life. What has she done for your life? She's done something really important. Pause your video and answer that question now. All right, friends. Well, I know that Ruby Bridges helps make schools equal. That means she helped Black students and white students go to school together. And I know that at our school, Black students and white students go to school together. So that makes me think that Ruby Bridges helped our schools be equal, and she helped it be okay for Black students and white students to go to the same school. So that makes me think that without Ruby Bridges, our schools might still be separate. Yeah, so Ruby Bridges affected you because she helped you be able to go to a school with students of different colors. That was a really big inferential question. That was like a second grade inferential question. Really nice job. So the next time you go to school and you see students of all different colors of their skin, you can thank Ruby Bridges because she is one of the people that helped white people and Black people go to school together. Awesome job, friends. Awesome job. That's one of my favorite books, and Ruby Bridges is one of my favorite scholars. Okay, a couple of announcements before we finish up. Friends, don't forget that we have our Zoom party on Thursday at 4 o'clock. We only have 2 more Zoom parties, so we would love to see you there. Please make sure you are watching Miss Marsh's video, Miss Cherney's video, and Miss Javity's video also today, and comment your name. And lastly, please make sure you are doing 30 minutes of Lexia, 30 minutes of Zern today, 30 minutes of Lexia, 30 minutes of Zern today. And please read a book. We only have 1 more week left of first grade, and you guys are doing awesome. So please keep up the good work. Try your best. I love you so much, and I'll see you soon.